All right, we're at 4:30, so as we call our meeting to order, we'll have the required electronic statement of electronic meeting. Pursuant to Utah Code, West Valley City has determined that this meeting will be held electronically without an anchor location given the ongoing novel coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic. West Valley City has determined the pandemic presents a substantial risk to the health and safety of those who may be present at an anchor location. This meeting will be held electronically. Members of the press and public are invited to view this meeting live on YouTube at www.youtube.com/user/WVCTV. Thank you. 1, 2, 3. Let's see. Oh, last time I used the participant list and we had someone, a council member, who his name wasn't attached. So I thought he wasn't there. So I'm going to look at pictures. 1, 2, 3.
My name is attached
4,
this time, Mayor.
5, 6. Wait a minute. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We're all here. Oh, great. Electronically, we're all here. And so that's very safe. I don't even have to wear my mask. So with that, all of us being in attendance, we have a full quorum. We do note that Nicole Cottle, who's the Assistant City Manager, is joining us and participating today in her new role, as Wayne is, our City Manager, is out of town. So welcome, Nicole, and we'll get right down to business. We start with our minutes of February 2nd.
Move for approval of those minutes, Mayor.
Second. And a second. Okay, it's before us then. Hearing no further comments, without objection, the minutes will be approved. Hearing no objection, it is unanimous. Minutes are approved. And as we review our agenda for our regular meeting, we will, there have been no changes to it, although my understanding is that we will handle 2 of the resolutions just a little differently, since we have individuals who, once we approve the resolution, will be sworn in. So we'll take care of that during the meeting. And Nicole is ready to handle that for us, as she does with all of those. Just so you're aware and don't get surprised by that'll happen. Okay, we'll do each one of them after we approve the resolution. Assuming that we approve it, of course. I'm not prophetic, I try and guess. So let's see, then with that, and there aren't any questions on our agenda, our regular meeting agenda, then we'll go to item 5, which there are 4 consent items on our agenda. The first one, of course, is to appoint Jim Visock as chair of our Clean and Beautiful Committee for the rest of this year, as they lost their chair. The other 3 are, again, these routine items for easement purchase, perpetual easement and temporary construction easement on 3 different pieces of property on 2700 West. That project that's now going on between, getting started between 4100 South and 4700 South. Any questions on those or comments? We'll take those as a group. or individually if you want. Hearing no comments, we'll move on to communications. Our first one is the Bangerter Highway interchange discussion. And so Nicole, who's going to handle this?
We'll start with Russ
Oh.
and let him just say something if he wants, and then we've got our consultant Blake here with us as well from the last time we had the update.
Thanks,
Okay,
Nicole.
Russ?
Thanks, Mayor. I will just turn the time over to Blake. This is our last presentation for the council. And then they'll be submitting a final report to us next week. And that will conclude our contract with Avenue. So I'll just let Blake share his screen and dive right into tonight's discussion. And then I'll have a little bit to say at the end, if that's okay.
Very good. Thank you, Russ.
Okay, I would just want to check my mic real quick, make sure you can hear me okay. Is it good?
Yes, you're coming through great.
All right, wonderful. And you can see me, and I'm going to share my screen here and get us going. You should be seeing a beautiful night sky scene as I get the presentation going. You see it all right?
Yes.
Okay.
And a green tent.
Yeah, green tent. Yeah. Wouldn't it be nice to be out there right now? So, well, maybe not right now. It's kind of cold. So let's wait till the spring and then let's go out and camp. So anyway, I just want to introduce myself one more time. My name is Blake Ungren with Avenue Consultants. We've been working with your fantastic city staff, including Russ Willardson, on this study. It's been a great project and been fun to see, you know, how everything's progressed. I do have with me Nick Betts, who is our designer, one of our roadway designers on the project, who's been helping with the conceptual layouts, and Ivan Hooper from Avenue Consultants as well, who is our traffic engineer. And so if there's questions as we go through this, I may need their help to answer some of them. And anyway, again, we just wanted to thank you for letting us come in and take your time to talk through the Bangerter Highway study. This is actually our last visit with you today. And we're excited to present some of the material. I think you've seen some of it already in the packets that were sent over. But I'll walk you through it. So as we mentioned last time, our timeline on this whole project was pretty tight due to the upcoming Bangerter Highway environmental study. And it's going to be starting soon. So, but I wanted to just let you know that we have accomplished a whole lot since the last time we met, which was only a couple weeks ago when we discussed the results of the traffic evaluation, if you recall. And specifically today, we are at the end of the study process and we'll be discussing our high-level conceptual layouts of the three options we've been discussing this far. So this is where we're at in the study process. One thing I wanted to do first is review some of the decisions that we've made with this group throughout the study process. First off, I wanted to just review the project objective and recognizing that UDOT is they're going to be making a decision on Bangerter Highway. Our project objective was to evaluate options to provide recommendations to UDOT for the best balance between impacts and mobility for West Valley City. As a result of our first study meeting with the City Council, we were tasked to look at these three options in more detail. And so here they are on this table. Option 3B, which is that first one at the top of the table, includes a 6-lane commuter lanes, and those commuter lanes act as a freeway between 3500 South and SR 201. It also includes a 4-lane frontage road in the same area. In this option, however, the 4-lane frontage road does not have any connection to the commuter lanes or any connection to this freeway system, meaning they do not have any on or off ramps to connect the frontage roads to the freeway. The second option we were looking at, option 6, includes a 6-lane freeway with frontage roads from 3500 South to SR 201. These frontage roads, which are located on the outside of the freeway, have on and off ramps to the freeway. So we sometimes refer to those on and off ramps as slip ramps. So if I say that, that's what I mean by slip ramps, is it's the on and off ramps. And it provides great connectivity from the side streets in West Valley City to the freeway via the frontage road system. Option 7 here, this last one on the bottom, is similar to option 6. However, instead of the frontage road running down the outside of the freeway, it runs down the center of the freeway. And this option, again, has on and off ramps to connect the frontage road system to the freeway to provide that good connectivity. And based on our previous discussions, these options were selected because they were the most likely to provide the best connectivity within West Valley City, and they were the most likely to provide the least amount of congestion on both the side streets and Bangerter Highway. There is a trade-off, however, as we discussed, and that trade-off is that these options will have the widest cross-section, resulting in the most impacts. And that's what we're going to be talking about today with some of the conceptual layouts that we've been looking at. So to accommodate good connectivity to the side streets in West Valley City and to provide the best traffic operations, these options that were selected will have a wider roadway footprint. And when I mean selected, I mean carried forward into a more detailed evaluation. So before we get into the conceptual layouts, I want to discuss a few of the limitations that we had while laying out these options. The first is we only had time and budget to go through a single iteration, meaning we have not had time to refine these layouts at all. So we were able to lay them out, but we haven't been able to go back in and readjust and do some more iterations. And typically on a roadway system of this size and magnitude and complexity, it takes several iterations to refine a design like this. And that's something that will likely be done during the environmental process. We also, to lay out these concepts, we used AGRC's aerial imagery, which is a couple years old. It was last taken in 2019. And the AGRC is the Automated Geographic Reference Center, which is the state of Utah's map technology coordination office. So it's got the best warehouse of aerial imagery in Utah. However, it is a couple years old. So that's one of the limitations there. These conceptual layouts are looking at a horizontal plane only, which means that we did not consider any of the changing topography as you travel along Bangerter. So we did not look at any of the vertical ups and downs along Bangerter Highway. And the reason why is because we do not have a topographical survey of any kind out there, which ultimately is going to influence the final layouts when you know where the slopes and everything are along the roadway. Also, we did not evaluate several features that will influence the final alignment or the final design, including that Jordan Valley Aqueduct water line and the easement that goes along with it. We talked about this last time. This is that 60-inch water line that runs down Bangerter Highway, and it's located in an easement that's somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 feet wide. It might be a little wider than that too, where structures are just not allowed of any kind. So it will need to be avoided. That easement will need to be avoided, or it will need to be relocated altogether. And this is the type of thing that takes a lot of time and effort to evaluate and will be considered during the environmental process, most likely. Additionally, we did not evaluate any utilities, and utilities can also influence how the design is laid out. Nor did we look at stormwater drainage, environmental constraints, or anything else like that that could also influence the design. Therefore, the impacts that we will be reviewing and the conceptual layouts that we will be reviewing in the next slides here to come are hypothetical and will change as a concept is further refined during the environmental process, as all this information is being added to the process that we don't have right now. I also want to just say that the alignment of the layout may shift as well. So we may be showing that this alignment is widening to the west, when at the end of the day, it may end up widening to the east. So you know, we're making assumptions based on the limited information that we have to create the best alignment we can think of with these conceptual layouts. But at the end of the day, when all these other inputs are added, it may change. So we don't want to take this, I guess the summary is we don't want to take what we have shown as the gospel truth, but just gives us a good insight into what that potentially looks like from an impact standpoint. And finally, I just want to let you know that the SR 201 interchange is an unknown right now. That concept is an unknown. And we did not lay out anything from 2400 South to 201, as that interchange, the final interchange layout, will greatly influence what's occurring between that 2400 South and SR 201. And so we didn't go up into that area because of that reason in particular, and that'll flesh itself out as UDOT continues to figure out what concept they want to implement up there. So those are some of the limitations with what we've done. Now let's spend a little bit of time reviewing the conceptual layouts for the three options that we looked at. I'm going to walk us through the study area starting on the southern end between, this is the segment between 4100 South and 3500 South. Just to orient you, north is up on the map, and this legend right here will also help orient you as we're looking through the map. The darker, this lighter gray along here, that is the roadway at grade. So no overpasses or anything like that. When you see this darker gray area on the map, which is typically at these cross section or at these crossing streets, you'll see that those are the bridges or the overpasses for the freeway systems. These light yellow areas represent potential partial property acquisitions, just partial. And these red highlighted areas represent potential full property acquisitions. And again, I use the word potential. I'll probably be using that a lot throughout this whole discussion because these are, again, hypothetical based on the limited information that we have. So, and they're hypothetical. So, however, the good thing about this is that these conceptual layouts will help us understand what the impacts could potentially look like. But again, there's a good chance that they will change from what we are showing today. So now let's discuss the conceptual layout on this segment. First thing that you may have noticed already is that I'm only showing one conceptual layout here. That is because the conceptual layout for all three options is very similar south of 3500 South. And the reason is because it transitions from the frontage roadway system that is north of 3500 South into a standard freeway system south of 3500 South. And so they're generally the same for all three options. So this single layout generally reflects the conceptual layout for all three options. This is showing the widening that could be necessary to accommodate the potential improvements we've discussed, which is shown here with the widening and improvements or impacts to the west side of Bangor Highway here, all these red parcels here. And part of the reason for this is because of this yellow parcel right here, which is Granger High School, which is on the southeast corner of 3500 South and Bangor Highway. So to avoid impacting the high school, we have to shift to the west to get around the high school. Just one of the kind of assumptions that we were making as we were getting into this. With that in mind, here is a summary of potential impacts between 4100 South and 3500 South. And just to kind of orient you with this table, we've summarized these impacts into residential acquisitions and commercial acquisitions down here on the bottom. And we have the partial and full for both the residential and commercial acquisitions. And I just want to let you know the commercial acquisitions, we took some liberties there. We kind of said that anything that was not residential is commercial. So like the golf course and any parks will be included in that commercial acquisition, even though it would probably be identified as a different type of acquisition. So, so this, as you can see here in this segment between 3500 South and 4100 South, we are seeing 59 potential residential acquisitions in this area because of the widening from the freeway system. So next I want to discuss north of 3500 South. This segment here is from 3500 South to 3100 South. We have now fully transitioned into the frontage roadway systems, which are prevalent in all three options. On the left here is option 3B, which is the commuter lanes option with the frontage road running down the middle. So this represents the frontage road running down the middle. On the outside, we see the freeway system or the commuter lane system. You can see these dark gray areas represent the overpasses here at 31st South, and then again down here at 35th South to overpass those cross streets. The cross streets tie into the frontage road that runs down the middle, but you can see here that there are no ramps to connect the freeway system to the frontage road system. So we do not have those connections. This middle option here is option 6. And the right option here is option 7. These two options do have on and off ramps that connect the frontage road system to the freeway system. And therefore they end up with a larger footprint, a little bit larger footprint. And we'll talk about that here in a second, but let me orient you. This is option 6, which is the outside running frontage road. So you can see these are the frontage road system on the outside here. And then down the middle is the freeway system. And these dark gray areas represent the overpass. This one here is 35th South overpass. And then this northern one is the 31st South overpass. I do want to recognize that there are 2 intersections associated with the option 6 at each crossing street, and that again is to accommodate the 2 frontage road system. You know, we have the northbound frontage road here and the southbound frontage road here. And then here, the off ramp, we have, if you're coming southbound on the freeway, there is an off ramp to connect to the frontage road system. And if you're traveling northbound on the frontage road system, there is a northbound on ramp to get onto the freeway here. And then south of 35th South, just so you're aware, there is an on-ramp to get on southbound, and then an off-ramp to get off the freeway northbound and to get to the frontage road system and get to 35th South. So really good connectivity in this area. 3100 South, option 7 is very similar to option 6 with regard to connectivity. We have the same directional off and on ramps as I just described with the option 6. However, the frontage road runs down the center. So you see, this is the frontage road system running down the center. We have 1 signal at each of the cross streets, excuse me. And then on the outside is the freeway system, both directions here. Here's southbound. And these dark gray areas represent the overpass. The overpasses, because there's a couple bridges at each location. Here's the 35th South overpasses, and here's the 31st South overpasses. Now, with regard to impacts associated with these concepts, the potential commercial acquisitions are shown to be pretty similar between all 3 options. The residential impacts are potentially within a couple of each other as well. So even though we are widening more with options 6 and 7, we're still needing a pretty decent amount of footprint for option 3B that can be utilized with options 6 and 7. So that's why there's not a huge difference between the total impacts between option 3B and 6 and 7. This is the segment just the north of what we were just talking about. Here's 31st South, and it goes from 31st South up to Parkway Boulevard. Again, we are still in the full frontage road system in this area. Option 3B on the left, again, has the commuter lanes on the outside here, northbound commuter lanes, southbound commuter lanes right here. These dark gray areas, again, are the bridges over the cross streets, over 31st South, and then over Parkway Boulevard. and then a frontage road system that runs down the center that connects to the cross streets again to Parkway Boulevard and 3100 South, but does not have on and off ramps to the freeway, to connect to the freeway. And option 6 and 7 is similar to what we've been talking about, where we do have on and off ramps in this area between the front to connect the frontage road system to the freeway system. And I'll describe that here. This is option 6 with the freeway system running down the center here and the frontage roads running down the outside. Here's the southbound frontage road and northbound frontage road. Here is the overpass of the freeway over Parkway Boulevard. And then again on the south here over 3100 South, we have the 2 signals at each of the cross streets. And then as we're traveling northbound on the freeway, there is a northbound off ramp to get to the frontage road. And then as we're traveling southbound on Parkway Boulevard, there is an on ramp to go southbound on the freeway. And so that's where that connectivity lies in both options 6 and 7. Again, option 7 is the center running frontage. So you can see the frontage road running down the middle of the freeway with a single intersection at both Parkway Boulevard up here on the north and 3100 South on the south. And then 2 bridges at each of the crossings here at 3100 South, bridge over 31st South for the freeway, and on this side as well. And then up here at Parkway Boulevard, there's 2 bridges as well. Now, again, last time we talked, if you recall, we mentioned that option 7 could potentially, this one right here, could potentially require additional lanes on the frontage road to accommodate the unique traffic patterns that are required for option 7. And this occurs around Parkway Boulevard. More specifically, we had to add a 3rd northbound through lane on the frontage road that wasn't required on option 6, and a 3rd southbound through lane on the frontage road that was not required on option 6 for option 7. And so when you compare the impacts of option 6 and 7, you can actually see that there was some additional widening that was required along the western edge of option 7 that pushed the freeway system here into this neighborhood road, which ultimately could potentially require additional acquisitions of residential property where there is now no more access because that road is now taken up by the freeway system. And so as you look at the impacts, you'll actually see additional impacts in option 7 as opposed to option 6, and then the least amount of impacts in option 3B. And as I mentioned before, these on and off ramps in option 6 and 7 could potentially require additional width beyond option 3B. However, option 3B could still potentially require a similar number of property acquisitions to accommodate its footprint or its total width, as you can see here, much like options 6 and 7. So even though options 6 and 7 have a wider footprint, a large portion of that footprint could still fit within the impact area of option 3B. As you see along this western edge here, these footprints are utilizing a lot of that property that would be required for option 3B. So that's why you don't see a huge change between impacts from option 3B to 6 and 7 is because of that the nature of the width of these footprints. So finally, this segment between Parkway Boulevard and 2400 South. Again, we didn't go north of 2400 South because that area is will be influenced by the SR 201 interchange, whatever occurs up there. So this is the last segment we're looking at. On the left, again, is option 3B. And I apologize for continuing to reorient you every time we get through here. But 3B is the commuter lanes option with the frontage road running down the center, a single intersection at each of the cross streets here on the south at Parkway Boulevard, and then on the north at 2400 South. The freeway located on the outside with 2 overpasses at each crossing or 2 bridges at each crossing in these dark gray areas here at Parkway Boulevard, and again up here at 2400 South. And I just want to note here that this, these show partial acquisitions, potential partial acquisitions along here, to avoid impacting the businesses on the east side of the road in this area with USANA and several other large structures. This pushes into the golf course on the west side. So that is just something to note and to be aware of, that the golf course would likely need to be reconfigured in this scenario. But that will, that assumption there avoids impacting the structures of these buildings. That doesn't mean that we're not pushing onto the property of USANA or these other buildings, because we would potentially push to the east a little bit to avoid as much impact to the golf course as possible. But there's a fine balance there without encroaching too far into these businesses that would require a full acquisition of their property. So that's something that I'm assuming that UDOT would want to avoid, and I think everybody would want to try to avoid. So options 6 and 7, again, option 6 is the outside running frontage road. So here's the outside running frontage northbound and the southbound frontage. And then we have the freeway located in the center. And I've accidentally clicked on that. So freeway running in the center here with an overpass at 2400 South. Just a single structure here, wider obviously than these other two. And then an overpass at Parkway Boulevard for the freeway. And then there are ramps in this area as well. So if you're traveling southbound on the freeway, this is an off ramp to access the frontage road. And then if you're on the frontage road going northbound, there is an on ramp to access the freeway. So really great connectivity between the frontage road system and the freeway system. And that's something we do not have with the commuter lanes in this area. So no on and off ramps in this area for the commuter lanes. Option 7, again, has the same directional on and off ramps that option 6 has. However, we're just swapping the where the frontage road is here, where we run the frontage road down the center of the system, while the freeway is on the outside. And you can see again the overpass at Parkway Boulevard, 2 structures for that for the freeway system, and again 2 structures at 2400 South for the overpass for the freeway system. And these all have the same partial impacts to commercial acquisition. So that's the golf course we talked about, plus 4 other properties in this area. When I say the same, I mean the total number of partial acquisitions. There's likely going to be a little bit more push onto the golf course with options 6 and 7 versus option 3B. But the total number of partial acquisitions are the same. So as this is our final meeting with you, I wanted to walk through a quick summary of how the objectives lined up for each of these options. So the objectives we talked about earlier are focused on impacts and mobility, where mobility was looking at providing connectivity and reduce congestion. And so let's see here if I can get this to advance. So here's a look into what the total impacts could look like with the options we've discussed. And this is a total summary only between 3500 South and 2400 South. South of 3500 South, we'd likely see similar impacts between all 3 options. So this is only summarizing those segments in this area between 3500 South and 2400 South. And you can see that option 3B potentially has the least number of impacts, while option 6 shows a potential of 9 additional full residential acquisitions and 1 additional full commercial acquisition, while option 7 potentially has the greatest number of impacts overall. Again, this table does not represent a final decision on the total number of acquisitions required and will change during the environmental study. However, it provides us with a general understanding of impacts with these types of improvements. Now, as we talk about providing connectivity, options 6 and 7 does the best at providing connectivity. It's almost like having interchanges at nearly all cross streets. Option 3B, while still providing connection from the side streets to the frontage road, the connectivity is not as good when compared to options 6 and 7 because of the lack of on and off ramps between the freeway system and the frontage road system. And when discussing reducing congestion on side streets and reducing congestion on Bangerter, all three options resulted in reduced congestion and provided a level of service D or better at signalized intersections. And that level of service D or better represents good traffic operations in the future. And so they all operate similarly for all three options. So, Russ, would you like to discuss the next steps when, and then we can take questions after that?
Sure. Thanks, Blake. So I think Blake did a great job of explaining the impacts of these three options. And he explained the assumptions and the limitations of our study. I mean, this work is work that's typically done by UDOT. You know, the city chose to move forward to gain an idea of, you know, what the options might be and what the impacts would be. So we have a great idea heading into the UDOT environmental study, you know, of what we're potentially looking at. You know, UDOT, we've been in touch with the UDOT project manager. They're concluding their procurement process right now and selecting the consultant team to do this study, and they expect to begin work towards the end of March or early April. So the city will be a major stakeholder in that process. The city's been very involved in the Mountain View Corridor environmental study, which, you know, started so long ago I can hardly remember when we did. But you know, the city staff was very much involved in that. City officials and elected officials are all welcome to be heavily involved, and we'll certainly invite through this whole process the UDOT project manager and the consultant team to come and give the council updates on, you know, on this environmental study. So, you know, we're not finished by any means. We don't want to, you know, I don't think we can see how the council feels as far as a preferred option, but I think we can go back and include other options and ask UDOT to evaluate other options that we did not pursue further in our own study. And UDOT will have the time and resources to do that. You know, we did a high-level study, but it certainly provided some very valuable information that will prepare us for being, you know, better prepared and better able to discuss and promote the city's interest as we go into this state environmental study. So with that, we'll take some questions if there are any.
Well, Russ, this is the mayor. First, I'd like to thank Blake and you for the work that you've done. This has been great information. It's been very helpful to see some possible options so that as we discuss it as elected officials, we can understand better what some of those impacts would be. So thank you very much for all of your work, and as well for meeting with three of us recently to explain some of the details so we could understand them a little better. So great work, great report. Appreciate this being done. From my personal viewpoint, I think it met the objectives of what we wanted when the study was started. So thank you. Council, do you have questions now? Comments?
I have some comments, Mayor, if I may.
Absolutely.
When this study was conceived of now over a year ago, and then we sought funding for the same, the idea was to minimize the impacts and to do a study to propose something to UDOT that maybe they would accept so that we would not have the same sort of glaring impacts in our neighborhoods as they do in the neighborhoods and cities south of us. I have complete confidence that UDOT, without our input or any suggestions from us, would be motivated and able to improve mobility and increase traffic flow and speed between Harriman and Salt Lake City. But that was never my goal. My hope was to avoid some of the horrible looking impacts and acquisition of property and back doors 10 feet from a highway and things that I see as I drive Bangerter Highway south of West Valley City. Along the way, that objective changed from minimizing to balancing mobility with impacts. And yet the studies that have been presented to us lost focus even on balancing. And that's obvious from the fact that impacts all score red while mobility scores green. All we have done here is now what UDOT would do. How do we get people back and forth through West Valley City without a care for what happens to West Valley City? And I think that Blake has done what we guided him to do. I don't blame him, but I think we've wasted $133,000 and accomplished nothing.
Any other comments, council members? I would add some comments. For me to be able to understand impact, all issues, have to be on the table. And as we went along, understanding those issues in some respects would change it. One of the things, though, that I pushed especially hard, even in our recent discussion with staff, was 3100 South. I think there's some givens. Okay, 3500 South and 4100 South are full interchanges. And I think those are kind of given and most likely going to move forward, because those, certainly 3500 South is a state road. So we're going to get a full interchange. 4100 South is is as a city-owned street, our most important east-west artery through the middle of our cities. We have some on the edges, but through the middle of our city is 4100 South. Once we go beyond that, the next most important one is 3100 South. And there are options that you can minimize the impact to neighborhoods by not allowing them access to Bangerter Highway on 3100 South, 2400 South, Parkway, Boulevard, those three. But I'm not sure that that will be the best for West Valley. The east-west transition and the access from the east-west parts of our city onto Bangerter are pretty critical. So it's a question, what is the right balance? If the balance is a difference of 5 homes, say, and I'm using this as a hypothetical, the difference between, that's a lesser impact if you don't take out those homes. But if it means, for example, that you have less access or no access at an intersection with Bangerter, what is the right solution there? What is the impact? Where do we draw the line and say, this is too much impact, this impact is okay? Because there will be some, no matter what. You can't avoid it. The least impact is to run Bangerter Highway through our city with no exits and no entrances. That will be the least impact. But that doesn't make sense. So when Councilman Bueller talks about balance, balance may mean different things to different people. If it's your home being taken, it's the wrong balance. And I had this discussion when I was in the legislature with people out along Mountain View corridor. And when the decision was to choose between where it's going now and 7200 West. And those who are impacted, it's out of balance. And yes, it disturbs some neighborhoods, but no matter where you put it, there's impact. So I don't know, Councilman Bueller, what the right level of balance is between impact and accessibility and traffic. That's really tough to determine. But I do feel like that for our city traffic, even with impacts, how could we not have access to Bangerter Highway at 3100 South? It's our second most important in-city, city-owned corridor in the city. There's more traffic on it. And having that access to Bangerter is pretty critical. Now, that's just my idea. It would be nice to have access at all of these different intersections, but I think 31 is more important than 2400 South or Parkway Boulevard. The next one, I believe, after 31 would be Parkway Boulevard. So I don't know. There are no good answers, but I like the information we've had because it highlights for us this issue of balance so that we can determine, is that too much or not enough of one, of connectivity versus impact or not. Anyway, just thought I would add those comments. Any other comments from the council?
So is our objective tonight to come up with or choose a plan, or are we going to have time? This is just our last presentation. We'll have time to talk about it as a council and then choose one, or what is our plan here, Russ?
So, I mean, that's up to the council. I mean, if you'd like to select, one of these options as your preferred one, certainly you can do that. And we can make that case with UDOT going forward, but neither do we need to be limited by these three options that were considered and studied. And in the initial meeting back in December, the ones that we chose to study further were the ones with the greatest impacts and the best connectivity and mobility. So if, seeing what that really means in terms of impact, we can always go back and ask UDOT to look at some other options and look at things that perhaps are not quite so impactful. So, my thought is that I would, it's up to the council, obviously. My recommendation would be, let's just leave it open and have the information that we do have now as we go into the UDOT study.
Okay, thank you.
That's, Russ, very good counsel. The intent here, see, even if we were to choose one, we can make a recommendation to UDOT, and they will take it into consideration, but we are not the final deciders. They will listen to us. And the stronger we push back, the more they will listen. If we don't do anything, if we just say, well, let us know what you want to do, and then right at the end we change our minds, we won't have much influence. Having this study, having this discussion puts Russ in a position to talk to UDOT and push some of our ideas forward at a time in the process when it can make a difference. So I agree with Russ that we don't have to pick an objective tonight. If we want to pick and have a discussion after this presentation, because we have our study, we can say we need to emphasize more on impact, as Councilman Bueller said, than what we have in these three options. Then we can do that. Or we can say, we like option 5 better. And that's one that we want Russ to push from the preliminary study. We can do that at any point along the way. So I think we have everything we need. We don't have to make any decisions tonight unless the council would like to. You certainly can.
Well, Mayor, and I would certainly agree with not making a recommendation. I do believe that along the road somewhere we lost the goal, which was to lessen impacts. And what we've seen is all about mobility, and that's all that I consider UDOT cares about as well, is just getting people through our city. And certainly we need to be able to enter and leave our city too, but I think we haven't done or accomplished anything that UDOT wouldn't be doing without our help, and I'm disappointed in that. And I don't blame the contractor, I blame us that we somehow at some point turned our back on the balance between impacts and mobility and just went all in on mobility, which is exactly what I think the problem with UDOT is. We blew it.
Well, remember, Councilman Bueller, that I don't know that people lost sight of that. Council members, we had pretty candid discussion on each of those issues. And over time, as we discuss this, it could change back, or it could stay where it's at, or it could go in a different direction. Remember that the council itself on this study and on the city's position has control of that still, and always will have.
And I think, Mayor, that one of the things we need to do is keep that impact in the forefront. We cannot do anything on Vangater Highway without impact. I mean, if we widen an intersection one lane, we're going to take out houses or lots on either side of the intersection. Impact is going to be there, but I think we need to remember to keep that as minimal as possible. And I don't know how we can do that other than just keeping it in the forefront and everybody's idea.
Any other comments?
Just a question. Can anyone help me understand maybe if there is some kind of a decision-making rubric? I get that we're not the final decision makers, but given the information that we have, I don't want to say necessarily that it's all useless, even if it is slightly different from what maybe the intention was going into the study. But is there a rubric, is there a matrix or a score that the state then uses DOT to determine which of any of these options or any of the options they come up with are the best, that score or rate, connectivity and mobility versus impact, etc.? Or is it really just at their whim? I guess that's what I'm asking, is how can we leverage this information and data that we have to maybe try to influence that, not influence it, but just to see kind of where they would shake out when DOT does start looking at their options.
Mayor, I'm not sure I can answer that question. I mean, certainly there is a process that they go through. We have not been through a lot of these with them. I mean, Blake, I don't know if you have any comments on that, but I mean, we can certainly keep the council informed as this moves forward and what those metrics might be.
You know, if I think Ivan could speak probably better to that. If you want to, Ivan, do you have a second to jump in?
Yeah, that is a really good question. And ultimately, this comes down to the environmental process that UDOT will follow, which really begins with the development of the purpose and need of the project. And that becomes kind of the criteria that all the decisions are applied against. So the purpose and need will be developed at the beginning of the study. Presumably a big part of it will be the mobility side, but connectivity and other things can fit into purpose and need as well. And then during the process, they'll consider different alternatives, and then they will evaluate those alternatives based on how well they meet that purpose and need for the project. And so a lot of it really does come down to what ultimately is into the purpose and need, which is often based on the transportation need as well as the community need. You know, what does the community want from this as well? And so that's going to be a great place where the city can provide valuable feedback, is on that purpose and need, because that really determines the course and ultimately the decisions that are going to be made here.
You know, Jake, what you described there, UDOT does have a process they go through, and with no outside input. In fact, if they didn't do an environmental study, they would just build the cheapest road they could to get people through our city. But of course, they do an environmental impact statement, and they will go through that. But I do know, and if you look at some of the other cities to the south and the impact that the cities had on pieces of it, we don't get to decide the whole thing, but they will listen to cities' input. Now, if the city comes up with something really off the wall, that's really expensive, they're probably going to be not very interested in that. But if we come in with reasonable requests that benefits our city and they're still able to meet their goals, they'll probably listen. But our discussions, because most of us are not going to be in the meetings. All this work is going on. Jake, you and I won't be there. So Russ is going to say, well, let's see, the council felt pretty strongly on this, but not this. And so he's going to represent us and his staff in all these discussions. But we need to give Russ clear direction. That was part of the advantage of having this study. At least now we have a basis to work from, and we can go back and change it, but that gives Russ and his staff the ability to go in and say, the city is okay with you doing, this through here, but you have to change these 3 items, just hypothetical. And having this study to help back that up, having the discussions we've had to alert Russ and his staff to our concerns will be very effective for them to have these discussions. So you're right on. But again, I go back to, we have to decide what we want our staff to work on. They're going to take care of all the technical stuff. And if there's, drainage issues, if there's water line issues, they're going to work around those as best they can. So, yeah, but we do need to give direction. And if it's not the right one with this study, we need to pick out those pieces that we need to give them, an idea on how to handle it. And so whatever the council wants to drive, you still can. The study, I think, was still very valuable just for information and a place to work from. It means a lot that we were able to put some money where our mouth was and actually study it. It will give us leverage even if we change to something that we didn't study. It just gives us a better place to work from and gives us more leverage, I guess you could say. That's enough of me talking.
So I have one thought. With Steve being concerned about the impact, leaving Bangor like it is from 201 to 35th is an option, but I still think the majority of our impact is going to be the on and off ramps at 3,500. Not as much north. So maybe we just have them do 35, 31, 30, or 47 and leave north of 35th the same. It works fine. Congestion's not that bad. And then you just go after 35th like a cut cat. We'll call this the traffic calming part of the Bangor Highway, because you can't go fast because there's too many cars. But it's another option, but I don't know that it would cut down on the impacts very much just because of the 3,500 south on and off ramps.
And I'm actually more concerned with the impacts between 3,500 and 47th, where there are a lot of neighborhoods.
Yeah, and we didn't look at that portion, so.
Well, we looked from 35 to 41.
Yeah, a little bit.
I thought we started with from 47th, but I think it would be probably considered the same type of section as 41 to 35. It's the same length, it's the same situation, same kind of impacts. But that's what I'm concerned about it with is the residents, not the businesses so much, and not the traffic. I don't care if people don't want to drive through West Valley because it takes them longer than going a different way. I'm okay with that.
Well, I would suspect. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say what they were looking at 47 and 41 were just full interchanges, and so they didn't put those in the study.
Yeah. And Councilman Bueller, just in the discussions I've had with people from other cities where they've put these in, and hearing public pushback, there will be a pretty strong influence on UDOT to put in overpasses. Those are going in. They won't allow it to stay the way it is because this is a major transportation corridor. And all the people south will say, get rid of the lights in West Valley. So they will build an overpass. Of that, we're assured. We could delay it some, but ultimately that will go in. The question is, do we want access? And when you build an interchange, not just an overpass, and if I'm wrong, Russ, correct me, but I suspect that they'll build those overpasses no matter what.
No, I think you're right, Mayor. I mean, that will be part of the purpose and need that Ivan talked about earlier. I mean, that's why they're doing this whole study.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't think there's any getting away from that. They're not going to leave it the same.
Yeah. Anyone else? Well, council members, you and I, as members of this council, have some fun discussions ahead of us. And, we have given some guidance to our staff, but it sounds like we need a few more discussions, not necessarily with our consultants, because they've given us a great place to work from. Great place. There's nothing like a study to help you hone in and figure out these impacts. So Councilman Bueller, we've got a great place to work from. With that then, hearing no further comments. Thank you, Blake and Ivan, for your participation. We'll go from there. And Russ, thank you for your comments. So a legislative update is next on our agenda. And, oh, yes, I see Lincoln Shirts has signed in. Should we go directly to him, Nicole? Okay. There
Hi,
he
Mayor.
is.
How are you?
Just fine. Good to see you. What
Good to see you
comments
as
do you have
well.
for us?
Very quickly tonight, just a quick update. This week, we're hoping to get final budget numbers. They are a bit delayed, so we're waiting to see kind of where things shake out in terms of the budget. The reason that's obviously important is just overall, it's important to the state, but generally speaking, that's going to influence some of the decisions around some of the infrastructure funding that the state legislature is going to be contemplating this year as well. And in that vein, it should be noted that House Bill 244, which is the funding package that's specific to Salt Lake County, did pass out of the House unanimously today. And in that funding package, West Valley City was allocated $1 million a year for the next 15 years, as well as $1 million worth of one-time money that will be going to West Valley City. So that did pass the House today, in large part due to Representative Dunnigan's effort, and will be sponsored by Senator Harper in the Senate. Couple that with what's taking place in the bonding conversations, I think West Valley City and kind of Northwest Salt Lake County is going to be faring pretty well. The major projects that are being contemplated as a part of the bonding package include some of the restructuring to Bangerter Highway to make that more of a freeway type system and designalizing much of that infrastructure. There's robust conversations taking place around the completion of Mountain View Corridor, and then U-111, as that also would impact kind of western travel throughout Salt Lake County, is another major priority for UDOT. So when we take the bonding package, which is contemplating some of the more regional projects that UDOT would be undertaking, I think we're pretty well positioned on the west side of Salt Lake County for a pretty significant investment in some of the north to south traffic patterns. And then add that to the House Bill 244 effort that allocated a pretty substantial amount of money to West Valley City. We're looking really good on the infrastructure front. Now, all of this is obviously predicated on what happens with the state budget, which is again why that's so important to us. And we're watching that closely. All indications are that it's going to be fairly robust and will allow for the bonding and commitment that I just described. So things are moving very well there. Some of the other topics that I've heard from in terms of the city priorities is the accessory dwelling units, as well as the building inspection and design standard bills. This is Paul Ray's HB 98 and Representative Ward's HB 82. There are ongoing negotiations, primarily with House leadership. Keep in mind, this legislature does have a fairly heavy developer influence, and so we're managing much of the developer influence on how we handle the dynamics around local control for much of these building issues that we're seeing in this legislative session. So no, those negotiations are still well underway. We were supposed to have a meeting today with Representative Ward and hopefully come to terms with actually exempting West Valley City out of the ADU legislation. And I think in large part, we're going to have some pretty decent success with that effort. So our hope is we can continue down this road, but a lot of negotiations still need to occur. The bill did pass out of committee earlier this week and is going to the House floor, where we think we're going to have that more robust conversation about ways in which we handle accessory dwelling units. So that's the quick and dirty update, Mayor. I'm happy to answer any questions. I know you spent a bit of time on the other ones, so I'll leave it with that and see if there are any questions and get you back on schedule.
Any particular concerns, council members, any bills or issues of concern other than what Lincoln has brought up? If any of you do have concerns or hear of a bill, certainly we can get a hold of Nicole or our staff and have them give us some feedback. You saw the list of bills that they're monitoring. There are a lot.
Indeed. A lot of stuff for local government this year. It's a pretty busy year despite COVID.
Yeah. Well, there are a lot of things I could say and have thought that I won't say publicly, but I think legislature has, I'll state it this way, an interesting direction they're going with cities.
I would agree with that, Mayor.
Mayor,
Okay, oh,
Yeah.
sorry, Councilman Christensen, apologize.
just a quick question on where we're standing with billboards again this year. I'm getting tired of fighting them.
So there are two billboard bills. There's Senator Hinkins' bill, which is kind of the throw everything in terms of regulation out the door and disallow much of the regulation around billboards. That bill was held in committee this week while we continue to negotiate on the Senator Sandel bill. Senator Sandel is trying to get some consistency between on-premise signs, which are business signs, and off-premise signs, which are your traditional billboards. And we're still working towards that effort. There's still a lot of work to be done, but he's definitely had an open door towards trying to negotiate a solution. So we're hopeful that with some pressure coming from Senate leadership, we're going to get to a place in which we will still have robust regulatory authority over billboards, but get some consistency between how we regulate on-premise and off-premise signs.
I just think that the billboards ought to follow our sign ordinances, just like everyone else. So it should be a pedestal about 4 feet high. Oh.
Mayor,
Oh.
okay, I just wanted to add, I apologize, my Zoom timing's off tonight. Just add to the council a note that we did on this legislative update tonight include position statement. As you'll recall, in years past, we kind of held that back because we had a year where that was used against us in a way we didn't like. I think we're going to just go for it and see how things go, meaning put it out there. But also just wanted to remind you that those change, they're frequent, even between our Tuesday meetings. So hold on tight. You guys already know that. But those are, as of right this minute, what we think at least we can gauge the positions to be, and Lincoln's done a great job at that. And again, I think things are just working out really well for us. The other thing I'd quickly say is on the ADU legislation, when Lincoln talked about us being exempted from that, please know that what that means is we as a city, you as a council could still choose however you'd like to deal with ADUs. We're just not subject to the oversight of the state with regards to that issue. So we're headed in that direction, mostly based on our very robust amount of affordable housing, which information and understanding is really taking hold with legislators even outside of our city, thanks to Lincoln. And so I think that as they begin to understand what the makeup of our city is, they're much more willing to concede that we've certainly participated very heartily in the affordable housing genre, and that we can handle some balance here in the city. So I wanted to just have that nuance with regards to ADUs as well. Thanks, Council.
Thank you. Just so the council's aware, of course, just because of my background and being mayor, I often get into discussions about bills. If it is a bill the city is involved with or is critical to the city, I make a point of trying to talk with our staff and confirm where the city is, so that I'm not at cross purposes thinking I'm supporting the city when the city has taken a little different stance. So I would encourage each of you the same. If you're in meetings and you're asked where the city position is, I'm not, we probably ought to touch base with our staff, stay current with them, so that we're working together. Now, that doesn't mean you can't take a position different from the city. You're an elected official, you can do what you want, but you need to be clear about if it's your position or the city's position. And I've done that a couple of times. And so we just say, and be careful too, even with our list, with our supporting, not supporting. As Nicole said, the city may be opposing a bill in its current format, and a substitute will come out tomorrow and will support it. Could change the whole dynamic. And unless you're staying up on it, you may miss that. So I don't try and follow the whole list of the city. I just let the city do that. I don't want to get that much back into the legislature. So I just help out on a few bills with the chamber and go from there. Well, thank you. If there's
Thanks,
no
Mayor.
more, thank you, Lincoln. Take care. Council calendar, and these, if there are, you can interrupt at any point. If I happen to skip over one fast, we can go back to it. Council calendar, potential future agenda items, council reports.
I have a quick one, Mayor. I attended the arts presentation of She Loves Me last night down at the Harmon Theater. And I think I drove out of West Valley somehow on the way back. I came straight down 2200 West, but somewhere I got onto a cow path because 2200 West made the old 4100 South look smooth. So I think before we get too many complaints down there, we need to look at doing some paving there to cover up all the holes they dug last summer.
Yeah, some of the worst potholes and problems, roughness, as I drive around the city of Bend, where they've dug a small trench across, and they do a terrible job at filling it back in. Even if they do a smooth job and they didn't do the base well, it sinks and you get a pothole.
This hasn't had a chance to sink yet.
Yeah, I've made several complaints on those in the past, and the city is good about addressing them. So if you could get a more exact location or talk with staff to help on that.
From 35th to 41st on 2200.
Yeah.
The whole thing.
It's the whole thing.
Very good. We'll get Russ out there, Russ and his team, and we'll take a look and take care of it.
And give some feedback. Okay.
You can add Parkway Boulevard at about 6200 West as well. That whole road is not very well maintained.
Had a rough winter. Okay.
Well, I think it's had a rough 10 years.
We'll get Russ to take a look and report back.
But since we're mentioning those, I'll mention 4700 South. I want you to know that there were a whole bunch of potholes here several years ago. Russ Willardson and his crew came in, put a new type of pothole filler in it, and it has survived great. It's not perfectly smooth. You can just tell a little bit that there's a bump there, but it has held up over the last several years extremely well. They did a great job there. I mean, eventually we're going to smooth all that out anyway, but as far as filling potholes, they did a great job with that. There is no need for a closed session.
Mayor, sorry, I just had one item that
Yes.
may be of interest.
Jump in.
Yeah, so this Thursday, the 11th at 6 p.m., the city, if you go on the Facebook page for West Valley City Government, you'll see it right there. In conjunction with our Healthy West Valley coalition that myself and Councilman Christensen participate in, is hosting a COVID-19 vaccination webinar. And this is going to be with Dr. Richard Ferguson from Health Choice Utah and Steward right here in West Valley, as well as Rich Lakin, who is the state's immunization program director. And so these are very authoritative, very knowledgeable folks who will be discussing for our community here some details about the phased plan for vaccination, about the vaccinations themselves, what that process is to get a vaccine, potential side effects, etc. So that might be an item of interest for our community and any of our staff and or council members as well, this Thursday, February 11th at 6 p.m. And the information to log on there is on the West Valley City government's Facebook page. And we can also send that out by email to the members of the council to disseminate as well.
I think I would add to that, the county asked me to go down and volunteer at the Mountain America Exposition Center where they're doing the current vaccinations. And I went 2 different days down there. And fortunately, I missed Saturday. It wasn't Saturday I went because it was packed.
Mm-hmm.
But even at that, you know, there are real challenges. And we had people come to the doors. I was checking temperatures the first time I went down. And people over 70 had come in and say, I can't get an appointment. What do I do? We try and, you know, help them. But there are a lot of problems just that not everyone has the information. So yeah, might be a good idea to listen into that on Thursday. I'll try and get that on my calendar. In fact, Nicole Cottle, I don't get things on my calendar well. If you'll have them put that on my calendar. I'm sorry, council members. I put it on and sometimes it doesn't take. I hit the wrong button.
Mayor,
Yes.
Russ has already responded back to me saying that he'll try to alleviate that cow path.
Okay. Great staff we have. With that then, as I
Mayor,
mentioned,
can I just-
sure.
Can I get an email with the link to that 6 o'clock meeting on Thursday? It'll be easier for me to share it than try and tell them where it is on the website. Because I'm not seeing it on the website plain and clear.
Oh,
I'm not sure about the website. I know it's on the Facebook page. But yeah, I'll get the email out for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, send it out to
Okay.
all of us, Jake.
We
yes.
can make sure that we do that, Councilmember Fiti Samanu and Mayor Bigelow.
Okay, Nicole, we appreciate that. Nicole
Thank
will
you.
get it done. Anyone else? Okay. If someone will make a motion, we'll end this meeting.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
I know it's a hard motion to make because everyone wants to keep meeting together, but it's not debatable. So without objection, we will stand adjourned. Hearing no objection, it was unanimous. We'll see you for our regular